My name is Liz Gabert, and my story begins in the Baptist Bible Belt of West Texas. I married a Catholic man, and together we raised 3 children internationally. Through my travels and experiences, my Jewish faith became secondary to everyday life. Now, after some incredibly powerful events that transpired recently, I'm at a place and time in my life to delve into my Jewish faith. I invite you to join me on this journey where I and an amazing array of weekly guests will enlighten you about the faith, people, and innovations that have shaped Israel and the Jewish people's rich history. Welcome to a journey to milk and honey.
Hi there, and welcome to A Journey to Milk and Honey. Thank you all for joining me today. You know, I am just so excited about today's episodes because I've got to admit to you all that I had never heard of the topic that we're about to discuss, which is the 13 principles of the Jewish faith.
Now, these principles are just so basic, yet so important to Judaism that we are going to begin today chatting about just principle number 1 of those 13 principles of the Jewish faith.
And with that said, I want to move quickly ahead and introduce y'all to my guest for today, who's going to talk to us about the 13 principles of the Jewish faith, and his name is Akiva Powers. Akiva is a former executive director for Jews for Judaism and is currently an amazing partner with the organization Partners in Torah. And guess what? Akiva has been blessed and challenged to have me on his weekly calendar every Tuesday for the past year as his very own and very special adult age kindergarten level Jewish partner in Torah. Akiva made Aliyah to Israel, which means he moved to Israel about 5 years ago from Pennsylvania. And by the way, I just learned this as well. Aliyah translates to ascent or going up, and moving to Israel is seen as a spiritual and geographical upgrade, which I just think is so cool. Akiva and I will be focusing on just principle number 1 of these 13 principles of the Jewish faith, because without understanding and believing principle number 1, there is no point in moving forward to the next 12 principles. So with that said, hold tight and I'll be right back with my very special guest, Akiva Powers.
Hey there, just a quick reminder before we get started that if you want to connect with us, you can find our website at journeytomilkandhoney.com or jmhpodcast.com. And you can find us on YouTube at JMH Podcast or A Journey to Milk and Honey. You can also find us on Facebook at Journey to Milk and Honey. You can find us on all other major social media platforms at JMH Podcast. And if you enjoy what we do here at A Journey to Milk and Honey, you can help support us by liking, subscribing, and leaving us comments and reviews wherever you listen to your podcasts. Thank you for joining me.
All right, folks. Thank you for joining me today. I am so excited to introduce y'all to Akiva Powers. Akiva is my partner in crime. No, he is my partner in Torah, actually. We've known each other about a year now, and we meet up every week. Hey, Akiva, how are you?
I am wonderful.
Wonderful. It's getting to be nighttime there in Israel, and you're getting tired.
No, it is nighttime.
It is. I know. And thank you for jumping in so late in the evening. I appreciate it a bunch.
Not a problem.
All right. So today, folks, Akiva and I are going to talk about, actually mostly Akiva, is going to talk about something called the 13 principles of faith. And when we say faith, we're talking the Jewish faith. These are 13 principles, and this is all I know, and I'm going to stop, that were articulated by Maimonides. And so that is all I know. And I'm going to say and tell you guys, here's the thing. I'd never heard of these until I started working with Akiva, and then even my rabbi at Chabad mentioned these. And I'm going, man, these must be important. And since then, I have learned they are quite important. So where I would love to begin, Akiva, is for you, of course, to talk a little bit about Maimonides, because honestly, I hardly know who the guy is. And he is the one who articulated these 13 principles back in the 12th century. That's about as far as my knowledge goes at this point. And so my question to you, to begin with, is who was he, and generally, and why do you think at that time this man felt it was the perfect time to lay out the 13 principles of the Jewish faith?
Okay. I think I should start by saying that every faith system has a structure. Every faith system has certain pillars of belief that make it that faith system. Islam has the 7 pillars. Christianity has its statement of faith, and Judaism has the 13 principles. The 13 principles were enumerated by Maimonides, but they were by no means something that he invented. I guess you could say he codified them or classified them and compiled them, but they were the principles that Judaism had been using since its creation. And they're really very basic when you think about it. And Maimonides, why at that time? That's when Maimonides lived. You can't get away from the fact that he was a brilliant individual. He could be classified as the greatest Jewish philosopher of at least that period, if not all time. And he also was a very prolific writer. He started writing, I think, at age 13 and continued for the rest of his life. He was born in Cordova, Spain. At the time, Cordova was under the rule of the Muslims, and they were fairly non-radical in that they allowed the Jews a certain amount of freedom to worship the way they want and so forth and so on. However, that changed. We read in the Torah a week or so ago that after Joseph died, Joseph of the many-colored coat, and after he died, after the Pharaoh that he served died, that came a new king. And he did not remember Joseph, and he did not remember what Joseph did. And so things changed drastically for the Jews. And the same thing happened in Cordova. A new group of Muslims took over. They changed the way that the Jews were looked at. And in fact, not just the Jews, but everybody who was not Muslim at the time. And they basically gave people a choice. They could either become Muslim or they could be exiled, leave the area, or they could die, essentially. 3 great choices if you believed in your faith and so forth. Certainly, the first choice of converting was not one that you might be interested in. And while the other 2 were not exciting, it certainly was better to be exiled than it was to be put to death. And essentially, that's what happened to Maimonides and his family. They chose to leave, and so they left Cordova and they moved to Fez in Morocco. And while Morocco was again under the rule of Islam, again it was a more moderate Islam that did not insist upon conversion or death. And so he was able to live his life there for a period of time. And in fact, he grew there in both knowledge and stature. He became, as a rabbi, it was not a great paying position, considered public service. And, public servants in the United States don't get paid that well. And at the time, rabbis didn't get paid that or at all. And so Maimonides went looking for another profession, and so he became a physician. And more importantly, he became the physician to Caliph Saladin, was probably one of the greatest Islamic warriors of the time, and Maimonides was his physician. During this period of time, Maimonides wrote a great deal of literature. His major work was the Mishneh Torah, the commentary on Jewish law and Jewish thought and so forth. And it contained the 13 principles of the Jewish faith. You wanted to say something?
Yeah, no, I was sitting there thinking about what you said about his commentaries, because I am new to this. I go to Shabbat. I look at those commentaries in the Tanakh as we're reading each parsha each week, and you look at these commentaries at the bottom, and it doesn't say Maimonides, it says
Because
Rambam.
Rambam.
Yeah.
Actually, most of them are not even Rambam. Most of them are Rashi.
Yeah.
They are abbreviations. Maimonides' name was Rabbi Moshe ben Maimon, Rambam. But his commentaries generally are not found in the books that you would find in the synagogue on
They're in mine.
You'll check it. I think you'll see
Just
that most of
saying.
it
Just
most of them
saying.
most of them are Rashi and not Rambam.
Okay. Okay.
but
I'm
he
gonna
had-
double check on that.
Yes, please do. But he wrote quite a bit. His is the basis of Jewish philosophy and thought. And he, as I said, was a prolific writer. And these 13 principles that he enumerated are basically what constituted Judaism then, constituted Judaism before, and constitutes Judaism today. It deals with the essence of God. It deals with our relationship with God, and it deals with, interestingly enough, what happens if we don't have a great relationship with God. They're divided into sections, and they're enumerated 1 through 13. And we're going to, over the next several podcasts, we're going to go through these 13 principles to try and understand what they are, what makes Judaism tick, why it is relevant to us today. The Torah is eternal. It is as fresh today as it was when God gave it to Moses on Mount Sinai. And yes, we believe that God gave it to Moses on Mount Sinai.
Hey, I'm jumping in. Hey.
Okay, jump in.
That is principle number 8, the belief in the divine origin of the Torah.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
And then number 9 is...
Don't get ahead of the story.
You brought it up.
I know. But don't get ahead of the story. We're
Okay, go ahead. I'm not here. You keep going, Akiva. We're good. We're good.
Okay. We're going to end with principle number 1.
Yes, we are.
You might as well, since you have them in front of you. What is principle number 1?
Okay. Principle number 1 of Maimonides, 13 Principles of Faith, is the belief in the existence of the Creator, who is perfect in every manner of existence and is the primary cause of all that exists.
Yes.
Okay. Does that sound right?
Yeah, it does. The Creator exists. God is the Creator. We believe that God created everything and that nothing exists if God didn't create it. And somebody will come back and say, they found this in the lab and they created that. But the basic tools that people use to create those things, God created those. It's a question of belief in the existence of God. And I've had this discussion with many people who don't believe in God. And I personally find it counterintuitive to maintain that God did not exist. I think it's difficult, if not impossible, to explain anything in the world that a piece of furniture has a creator, a car has a creator, name it, and so forth and so on. But now let's take it down to something very simple, something very basic. Let's talk about the fruit juice factory. You're familiar with the fruit juice factory, right?
Sure.
Yeah, it's got little labels on it, say Mott's or Minute Maid or what have you. Yeah, but that's not the fruit juice factory that I'm talking about. I'm talking about the fruit juice factory that comes in this little package.
You got an orange.
I've got an orange. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And this is a fruit juice factory. If you think about it, if you open up the factory, you'll find inside of it little boxes of fruit juice. They're individually wrapped. And I'm not talking about the segments, but within the segments, they're actually individually wrapped. And when you open them, out comes fruit juice. So how did it get that way? And how is it that something like this can grow from a seed into this and produce the fruit? Because if you think about it, within that seed is contained everything that you need to produce fruit and juice from this factory. That seed contains within it the roots, the stalk, the stem, the actual tree itself, the branches, the leaves, and the flowers, everything that you need to create one of these. And it's all contained within that little seed. I think it's counterintuitive to think that this just came about by random choice. Why doesn't the orange tree produce apples? Because it's not an apple tree, obviously. So there's a belief in a creator is a belief in a designer, somebody who put this together in a particular way that it works. When there's a story attributed to the Rambam, it's also attributed to many other rabbis, but the story works regardless. There was once a great individual in a town who did not believe in God. And he came to challenge the Rambam, and he asked him questions and so forth and so on. And no matter what the Rambam said, he still did not believe in God. But at the same time, this individual was a great lover of art. And the Rambam knew this. And so he asked him if he wouldn't mind if he would just step out of his study for a couple of minutes. And he had something he needed to do, and then he'll get back together with him. So the gentleman went out. And when he came in, standing next to the Rambam's desk was this easel. And on this easel was this magnificent painting. And the guy who appreciated art looked at the painting and he went, "Wow, this is amazing. Look at this. The colors, the composition, the way things are put together. Can you tell me who the artist is?" And the Rambam said, "Artist? There's no artist. I had some paints and I bumped it with my elbow and this is what happened." And the guy is beside himself. He says, "You can't get me to believe that this magnificent painting, with all the way that these colors blend together and how the composition works so perfectly and so forth and so on, came about by chance." And the Rambam looks at him incredulous and he says, "But no, that's exactly what happened." And the guy is insistent that it can't be. There's no way that something this magnificent came about by chance. And the Rambam looks at him and he says, "Think about what you're saying. Here you have a rather flat, two-dimensional object. Yes, it's pretty to look at. And yet you believe that it came about because of somebody creating it. And yet you look out into the world, into the trees, into this fruit factory, into the birds and into the ocean and everything else, and you don't believe that there was a creator behind all of that. It's impossible to believe that somebody would believe that this two-dimensional object needed a creator, but the world and the way it comes together and the way it works and the harmony in it and so forth and so on did not come together with a creator." And so the first principle of Judaism is that, yes, there is a creator. Somebody sat down and intelligently put together the world as we know it. Yes, it needs some fixing. Yes, it's got some problems, but still, there was somebody who was intelligent and put it together in a way that it works. There's a harmony in it that can't be ignored. The way things come together, the way the seed for the orange, just about everything has a process that makes it work and puts it in harmony with everything around it. When you think of the orange tree, it has green leaves on it. What do the green leaves do? The green leaves take out the impurities of the air and put back oxygen. We need the oxygen in order to live. Birds need it. Animals need it, so forth and so on. There's a harmony in nature and in everything else that there is, and there was a creator of it. That is basically, and in a nutshell, what Judaism says is the first concept, first principle. Because without understanding, without accepting the fact that there was a creator of these items and this system, then the rest of it makes no sense. And I submit that without acknowledging that there is a creator, that somebody put together this program and somebody set it all out so that it works like clockwork.
Yep.
Where are you? I don't understand personally.
Yeah, no, that's exact. And I think you've explained it very well. And Maimonides, by the way, also said, and I'm sure you know this, he said that he described God as a necessary being, a necessary being. And so, and I think there's something to that, which
Well,
is
yes.
what you just tried to explain.
Yes.
Yes. And for a then look at, you talk about an orange. Look at a human being.
Oh,
Look
I'm
at
trying to keep it simple.
simple, stupid
I'm trying to keep it.
with an orange. But right,
Yeah.
if you think about a human being, holy Toledo.
Yeah.
We just happened by chance, by sheer chance.
Amazing, isn't it?
Yes, I don't think so.
I don't think so either. And
Yeah.
as I said, I think it's counterintuitive to believe that, because I don't think there's any way. I don't think there's any other way that you can explain it other than there was a creator. Because everything else falls short.
Yep. Exactly. I think I love your orange analogy or explanation. I think that makes a ton of sense. And there's people like Albert Einstein, for example, one of the greatest minds in more modern history, right?
Yes, he believed in God.
He believed in God. He absolutely did. Because you try to explain, there's just so far you can go. And the explanations stop.
Yes, Einstein believed in God because of the things that he saw, things that he witnessed, that, to the exclusion of everything else, points to a divine creator. Now, we may not fully understand the creation, but to say that it came about by a big bang or a snap of the fingers, and by the way, I should point out that Judaism doesn't necessarily have a problem with evolution, but remember, it's only a theory.
So if somebody is curious about the concept of God's existence in Judaism or elsewhere for that matter, and wants to delve in, what message do you have at this point in time to encourage them to take that leap and dig in?
I think dig in is the correct terminology here. If you have questions, don't be afraid to ask. You deserve answers to questions. Therefore, don't be afraid to ask. Keep asking until you get an answer that is satisfying, logical to you. Judaism welcomes questions. We are not turned off by questions. And it reminds me of the story of the Hebrew school teacher who had this brilliant kid in his class who kept asking questions, and he finally got fed up and said, stop asking questions. But no, don't stop asking questions. Always ask the questions. Search out the answers. And if where you're asking questions is not giving you answers, or answers that you just have to accept it because that's the way it is, then maybe you need to be searching someplace else, because there are answers out there and you deserve to find them. And so keep looking for them. And as I said, Judaism welcomes questions. We're not afraid of them.
Hey, I've been pretty lucky so far with all my questions of you and others. Nobody's told me to hit the road yet.
I was going to say yet.
Yet. So, all right, Akiva, I think that is a wrap. Thank you. Thank you so much for this. We will delve into more of these principles. I think that the principle number one, the existence of God. Without that, there's no point in delving into the rest of them, right? And so that's why it's
you are
number
right.
one. Yeah.
If you absolutely determine that that God does not exist, then what's the point of asking the other questions
That's right.
or receiving the other answers? Because they're all predicated upon the belief that God exists.
That's right.
Can I prove that God exists? I think my answer is yes, and here it is.
There you go.
This is proof that God exists.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Akiva, thank you so much. Appreciate it a bunch. And I will talk with you very soon in our
Yes.
weekly lesson. All right. You have a good night there in Israel.
Thank you. Thank you.
Be
I will
safe.
certainly try.
All
We're
right.
fine.
Take care.
All righty. Take
Okay.
care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
So I hope that y'all found today's episode of A Journey to Milk and Honey as interesting, educational, and hopefully as inspiring as I did. I want to thank Akiva Powers for joining me today. Akiva has become such an amazing mentor, teacher, and friend over the past year, and I am just so grateful to have connected with him through the amazing organization Partners in Torah. In closing, I have to admit to y'all, and I'm sure that I am not the only one when I say this, that for a good portion of my life, though I hoped that God existed, as so many believe he does, I never really thought much about it, or certainly ever asked questions or delved into his existence until recently. And of course, once I learned about the 13 principles of the Jewish faith, generally, it was a no-brainer for me to ask the hard question, which is, as we learned today, principle number 1 of Maimonides' 13 principles of the Jewish faith: does God exist? This number 1 principle states that God is the creator and ruler of the universe. And for me, Akiva's very logical, orange explanation as to why God must exist makes absolute sense. And if, as we discussed, Albert Einstein, with an IQ of a whopping 160, believed in God's existence to explain how something could come from nothing, there must be something to it. And get this, a 2009 poll by the Pew Research Center found that 51% of scientists surveyed believed in God or a higher power. This belief rate is lower than the general public's belief in God or a higher power, which was 95% in yet another 2006 Pew Research Center survey. You know, some folks might say, and I have somebody near and dear to me who maintains this, that people use the belief in God as a crutch, as a tool to find strength and then cop out in order to blame someone else when things don't go right or their way. And I guess that is sometimes the case. But now that I've been paying more attention, I am of the opinion, and I'm sure the polls would reflect this as well, that generally speaking, folks who have faith in God or a higher power tend to be much stronger emotionally and oftentimes physically. They're generally happier and more content, more positive, and live life with a purpose. They also tend to care about their fellow human beings more, in my humble opinion. So, by recognizing that God is the creator and ruler of all existence, my hope is that I can always embrace a sense of purpose and direction in my life, and pray that you can too, because I think that in acknowledging his omnipotence, we can find strength, guidance, and clarity in navigating the complexities of the world, and good Lord, are they complex today. You know, I also think that with faith, it's easier to move forward with confidence and strength, knowing that we are never alone in the journey of life, as the feeling of loneliness, sadly, these days, can be so huge for so many people. But personally, I also believe that God expects us to help and do the proverbial heavy lifting that it takes as we elevate our actions, striving and doing our best to live with integrity, humility, and gratitude. And in doing so, I think that we are doing exactly what God wants and expects of us. And that is that we are honoring Him with our actions. Because I have also learned in the last year that for the Jewish people, that is what our lives here on earth are all about: to honor and thank God because without him, we wouldn't be here. To me, it all makes sense now that we are here on earth to honor and thank him in all of our actions, and especially with good deeds, or what we, the Jewish people, call mitzvahs, for all that he has given us. Wow, what a beautiful concept that is. And I don't know about y'all, but I am personally now so ready to move ahead to the second principle of the 13 principles of the Jewish faith with Akiva, coming very soon here on A Journey to Milk and Honey. Thank you all so much for joining me today on A Journey to Milk and Honey. Just a quick reminder to jump onto our website at journeytomilkandhoney.com or jmhpodcast.com. You can also find us on Facebook at Journey to Milk and Honey as well. To find us on all other social media, including YouTube, X, Instagram, and Spotify, you can find us at JMH Podcast. And if you enjoy what we do here at A Journey to Milk and Honey, you can help support us by liking, subscribing, and leaving us comments and reviews wherever you listen to your podcasts. Thank you so much again, and shalom.